Eclipse, and we need to get code fixes into them, often on older versions of Eclipse, because products that are sold out in the field stay there a while. So since I've been involved in this for a while, I'm here to give you a demo and some idea of what we do at LTS, which is long-term support. So first, I want to talk about what LTS is. Like I said, it stands for long-term support. It's an infrastructure that Eclipse is providing at the foundation that lets us do maintenance on older releases of Eclipse. It's also a dating service which lets people who need fixes find people who can create fixes through the marketplace. And it's a way to safeguard products that are commercial products that need a way to provide support to their customers over a long period of time. I also wanted to say what LTS isn't, because sometimes it can be a bit confusing. It's a term that's also used by Ubuntu when they put out a stable release that you can rely on being supported for a while. That's not quite the same meaning as LTS and Eclipse. It's not a release train. We're not putting out like a version 4.2.3 of the 4.2 stream, for example, but we can get fixes on top of the 4.2 stream. It's also not a help desk. It's not just to have people phone up and ask for assistance. And it's also not a free service. Being part of Eclipse, a lot of things are free, but this isn't. And so I just wanted to explain what that means. So there's three entities involved in working with LTS. There's the foundation, who invests in hardware and personnel to make this work. We have build machines, we have a dedicated build engineer who makes sure the builds are running and working, and that comes from the Eclipse Foundation. And then there's members of the LTS working group that have to pay to belong. IBM is one of them, and in order for us to access this infrastructure, we participate in it because of the foundation's expenses in keeping this running. They need to have some dedicated money coming in, so our fees help keep this working, but it's not a for-profit. It's a non-profit just to keep it alive and keep the release engineer working and that type of thing. And then there's the users who will be consuming the fixes, or the people who don't necessarily do the work of making changes, and they could be third parties, although for IBM we are our own customer a lot of the times as well. When we need fixes, we use this mechanism to get fixes for other groups in our company that are waiting for them. So the green arrow shows the flow of money. A user might pay an LTS member, for example, if Eclipse Source is one of the companies that offers support. If you were to need a bug fix, backported to, say, the Mars release, you could contact them and say, can you fix this for me? And they'll say, sure, it'll cost this much. And then they could go ahead and make use of all the LTS infrastructure allows them to have and provide that to the customer. Any questions about the money side of things? It's kind of ugly, so I get it out of the way first. So why would you need this? Primarily, it's something that commercial products have to worry about. If you're putting out a product that you're selling, and that's something that the Eclipse license allows you to do, build products that you're selling to customers, they're expecting service. If they find a problem, they don't want to hear, oh, that will be fixed next year when we pick up the oxygen release. So commercial products often have long support durations, 5, 8 years. Some industries have even longer. Some industries make development tools for whatever they're working on. So for example, aerospace industry, say there's a company making planes, they want to use Eclipse software to develop the code they need in the aircraft. And they can only do that if they can guarantee that those tools that they use to make the software will continue to work for the range of about 30 years, the lifespan of that model of the plane. If they can't, then they're not allowed to use the open source software, because there's no guarantee that that's going to be still working and able to function if there's a problem 15 years down the road. So having a long-term support infrastructure here allows them to say, okay, we have a way to confirm that we're going to be we can set up a contract with one of these providers. Eclipse is providing the infrastructure, the provider is providing the expertise for the particular code we're dependent upon, and now we can work. And also, some teams get locked into specific versions of Eclipse, so you don't have a choice on moving up to the latest version of Eclipse. You have to use, say, the Juno release because that's what your clients are using, and you need to keep maintaining that. But if there's a bug that you need fixed inside of Eclipse code, you need a way to get a patch to your customers, or you're going to be in trouble. So, one of the problems with working in open source is the developers always want to work on the latest version, the next version. So all the developers are working on the Oxygen release now, and Neon is old news. You don't need to keep making fixes back on that. Well, it's not old news. Mars is old news because it's finished its release cycle. Neon still has Neon.2 coming and Neon.3 coming, but after that, it'll be old news. So when bug fixes are made, for example, bugs found now, they fix it in Oxygen, they fix it in Neon.2's maintenance stream, but it's not typically backported further than that. It's expensive. You have to have a build environment to be able to build the old version, which is often non-trivial when you have changes going through the build systems throughout the years. Sometimes special hardware, special versions of operating systems are necessary to make those things happen. And also you need to understand the code logic of the piece that's broken. You can't just go in and magically make a fix. You have to have some understanding of it. So there's a lot of problems and expenses associated with making code changes and making them properly and correctly. So I wanted to talk about, I've done this talk before and just talked about the benefits of it, but wanted to actually do a demo here of fixing some code, and you can see how it works. So we have an actual bug that was fixed in Oxygen recently. I picked it not because it's necessarily a horrible bug, but it does have some visual aspect. I can show it to you and you can see it failing. So it's bug 488771, and in, for example, file new dialog, if you were to enter a backspace or a colon here, and then try to use the advanced button, it doesn't catch the situation properly. You end up having multiple, there's only supposed to be one of these little checkbox things here, and it shows up multiple times and confuses some users. And so a fix was done recently by a developer in the platform UI team, and it was committed to the 4.7 milestone 1 version. So it's in Oxygen now, but if I have a product that a customer is complaining about this with back on the Mars release, I'm going to have to get that backported. So I decide there's a few ways that you can do this in LTS. You can go out and shop for somebody who knows how to make these changes, for example, Eclipse Source or IBM, and say, could you fix this for me? Or if you're feeling confident enough about making a change, especially one that's already been made in another stream and you just need to backport the change, you can do it yourself. So let's do it ourselves. The fix, if you look at the bug, and we will in a moment, we'll see that there's a push done. We can look at the change. We can look at the old version of the code and get the change in. So because I'm a member of LTS, I can check out the maintenance stream for Mars and from Git, and that's the Git that's inside of the LTS side of things. You need to be an LTS member to access this version. I can make my code changes, push them back into the LTS Git, get the changes reviewed. There's two different ways, two different forges you can use. There's one called LTS Central, which is shared amongst all of the members of LTS. So for example, if SAP goes in, they're a member, and makes a code fix in SWT, I can benefit from that because their change is already in LTS and I don't have to repeat it. I can just pick it up as another member and get their binaries that's already been built, for example. So I can make my changes, push them back in, get them reviewed. They need to be reviewed to get pushed into, to get merged, and then I can kick off a build. Builds are done for major releases like the Mars maintenance release 4 times a day. So at 6 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., and midnight Eastern time every day, there's a build of the 4.5 maintenance stream on LTS going. So I just have to push it in, and I can wait for the next one, or I can kick one off myself right away if I want to. And then after testing it, making sure it does what I want, I can take those plugins, package them up as a patch or whatever's appropriate for my customers, and deliver it. Because I can get from this signed binaries that are ready to put out into the world. Okay, so let's actually do it. And I don't know how well it'll work. I don't know how well let's first of all see if I've even got Wi-Fi. I hope so. So let's see. So first of all, that's not what I wanted to show you yet. My screen got smaller. Okay, so here's the bug. It's already in a verified fixed state with a target of 4.7 milestone 1. And if we scroll down, we can see the description. It was originally, it was moved to Platform UI after being analyzed as I think a WebTools problem originally. And then Chuck Bridgham from the WebTools team said, no, this is happening even with the file new dialog box, so let's move it over to Platform UI. And Shimon was able to investigate and fix the problem. So the fix that he came up with was just a modification to 2 source files inside of Platform UI. The place where once the advanced button is pressed, detecting that the input of one of the other fields that it's assuming is correct is actually not correct, needed to get done. So what we see here is he detects a problem where there's no original path. The segment count of the file is just a size of 1, meaning it's just the file name. Then we should consider it an invalid and not continue processing, so that he adds a return false there. And similarly, in the new folder wizard, there was a similar check where we detected something wasn't valid earlier, but didn't respect that field. They just went ahead and used the data that was there, even though it was marked as the valid was false. So a small change there to make that work. So let's see, where's my Eclipse? So just to show you that it's failing, what I have here is I've checked out or cloned from the LTS Git, and I've got the org Eclipse UI IDE package, which is where the source code exists, and I've got let's see, just so we can see it. It's from the R45 maintenance stream, which is the version that I need to fix in because my product is based on Mars. And we can see the bug actually happening because, let's see what happens. So I'm launching just the IDE within here so we can see that it's failing. And then once I make the code change, we'll see that it no longer fails, and then make the change. Okay, so it's fairly simple to make the to demonstrate the problem. Why is it not responding? Here we go. So if we go to the File New dialog box, and there's a few places where this will fail, but this is the simplest. So let's say we were going to make a file, and normally if you just hit the advanced button, you'll see that there's a place where you can link it in the file system or not, which is fine. But if you put an invalid parent folder here, for example, a colon, You see an error, it does get it detected, and there's an indication at the top there's a problem, and if you hit the advanced button, nothing happened. So if I now fix that, remove that, and hit advanced again, we see there's 2, because it didn't detect the fact that it messed itself up. So it shouldn't do that. If I did it again, you'd see 3 and 4 and 5. And also there's data getting logged. There's a little stack trace that gets popped to the log file each time. So that's the bug we're going to be fixing. Just to make it a little easier to edit, I've got the changes that I want to place in here in another file. So just in the Wizard new folder main page, we've got here, this is where the test for whether the valid variable is true or not should be. So let's put that in there. And also at the top of the file, we like to keep the date accurate, the fact that this was last touched in 2014, and I'm making a change now. Change that to 2016. And in the other file, there's this code here, which I'm cheating and replacing this way. And again, at the top, change the date. This wasn't changed since 2010, but we're changing it today. So now I've changed those files. It's already compiled them, so we should be able to run the test again, make sure that it's not causing us trouble. We'll wait for it to decide it wants to play. Okay, so file new file. So having it there is fine. Having an error still opens it up, and we're fixing it. Okay, so we're no longer getting the improper handling of that situation. So that's what we wanted. Confirm that the change works. So now I can push this. Now this is where I might have to revert to command line because I'm not as familiar with using egit, but let's give it a try. So I can commit this. So I've made those 2 changes. I can do a commit, and what I want to do is just so that I am keeping track of where this came from, what fix I've made, I'm going to put a comment, which is the bug ID and the bug description. And I'm going to commit that. And now I should be able to push it as well up to the 4.5 branch, which is over at now. Let's try this, and we'll see. I may not have permission with the defaults, and I have to put it through Garrett. But let's see how it works, and I don't know how well it will work through the Wi-Fi. That's the live part of the demo that may or may not work, because I'm actually pushing this to the real LTS Central. So we'll see. Let's see. So it's 0% along so far. And we'll see now. What I'm going to be doing after this is, after we get it pushed, I'm going to review it in Garrett, approve it, because I happen to have the authority to approve my own fixes. That's not normally what would happen. I'd have to get another developer to do that, but right now I have some permissions that maybe I shouldn't. And that will make it merged into the stream, which is available for any LTS member, and then we can get a build kicked off. Okay, like I thought, it failed, and it timed out. Okay, so let's pretend that worked. I knew that going through the network might not be the cleanest thing. But the next thing we would do is come over here to Garrett at LTS. So if you see the URL is lts.eclipse.org. This is the website and the build system that we've got for LTS. And let's look at, again, we're looking at whether I can get this showing through the server unavailable. Okay, so what we'd see if the web was working for me is a change I had done earlier. I did the same fix for the 4.3 release earlier, and so the code change, which is very similar to this, would show up in the Garrett instance at LTS. This is the one that was at eclipse.org main for the headstream on oxygen. But similar would show up for the change I just made here, showing the code changes, and then I would just approve it to the standard, give it a +2, and it would get merged. And then the next step is to go to our build system, and at LTS Central, again it's lts.eclipse.org/Hudson, and Eclipse members can have their own private forges. So each company, so IBM has one where we can make our own forges underneath, or there's what they call LTS Central, which is shared amongst everyone, so all the fixes are together. And can't see it off the left side of the screen, so let me just drag it over a little. Here we go. This is the history of the builds. You see that they're done every 6 hours. On October 24th, there was an error. One of the machines ran out of disk space, so the developer, Frederick Gurr, who's the release engineer at Eclipse, had to make a correction for us to keep this running cleanly, so that was a small hiccup. And like you see that the latest build was today at noon Eastern time, and well, I guess it was noon this time. I guess it's, I don't know whether it's showing the local time or not, but the build was successful. There's no build currently going on, and if I want to kick one off, I can just click build now. It'll allocate a machine to do the build, and off we go. And then I wait 2.5 hours, which we don't have time for in the demo. So what I would normally do is, what I can do, and I'm assuming this won't work either. Let's see. May or may not work. What I can do once this build is complete, oh, look at that. I can look at the artifacts from the build, which means I can get right down and that's odd. Build artifacts, and go to the repository, into the plugins, and I should be able to find org.eclipse.ide UI.ide.source, for example. And if this was the build after I've made those changes and committed them, the time still, because we didn't make any changes to the actual version, what we'd see is that the qualifier would have today's date and time of the build. I could download that jar, check inside, you'll see the source changes are there. So if all I needed was the actual jar, it's this file that I could download, create a patch for, and deliver that to customers. So the only other thing that I would do at the end, once I've confirmed that this is what I want to do, back in the bug, which is verified in fixed state, I can also come in here and add the LTS keyword so that other people that come later looking at this bug can see that it's already been fixed in the LTS system. and that they may benefit from the work I've done earlier. So we try to keep any bugs that have gone through this marked that way so that you can save some time and go and grab your bundles and off you go. So that's not as smooth as I hoped, but that's how it works. I didn't get to actually push the code, but I hope that gets the idea across. So let's go back to my little checklist. So a few other things I wanted to mention about what you get or what the LTS infrastructure allows is that as part of the build, those jars that I was just showing you as artifacts in the repository are signed with a certificate from Eclipse. It's a special certificate for LTS. It's not the generic Eclipse one. If you were to use jar sign or verify and take a look at the content of the certificate, you'll see that it's got long-term support as the organizational unit. And that way we can be sure, we can do some verification of the fact that it was this system that built it. It wasn't just somebody doing it on their own system with questionable content. LTS is a working group at Eclipse. We have a benefit for other working groups. For example, PolarSys participates in this. They donate a portion of their money towards the Eclipse Foundation for LTS use, which means that anybody that's a member of the PolarSys working group has access to the infrastructure at LTS. Instead of going and directly working with LTS only, that's another option. So we're allowing different working groups to help each other that way. So just a reminder, we've got LTS providing a marketplace, which if you go in the marketplace, you can search for what vendors might be there to help you get support for particular pieces of Eclipse projects that you rely on. And it gives you also the guts of the infrastructure, the build infrastructure, the Git repositories, the Gerrit checks, to allow you to build various older versions of Eclipse and get fixes that you need. So I'm almost running out of time, so if anybody has any questions about how the marketplace works, just let me know. I can get into more detail with you. This is just a screenshot of what you'd see if you went to the LTS section of the marketplace, a list of the different companies that are providing support and which components that they offer support for are there. If you do want to do that, then you're going to be going to one of those companies and saying, I'd like to set up some support with you, and what form that support takes is between the person looking for the support and the company providing it. LTS working group doesn't put any restrictions on how much things should cost or whether it's an annual maintenance fee or per bug, or that's completely up to the individuals. So there are business opportunities, people that are subject matter experts that want to sell support for things that they see as being in need can do that. They can become a maintenance provider and offer their services. And those that are saying, I've got a product that's going out, I want to include this open source content, but I can't do that unless I have someone I can go to for support if something happens. You can set up a maintenance agreement with them and say, will you support this for the next 5 years so that I can ship my product? And they say yes, you pay them a bit of money and everybody's happy. We also have a website, ltseclipse.org, where people can contact us and say, I'm looking for this kind of support, please help me get connected with somebody. And that just sends an email to one of the people on the working group who will attempt to get back to you with help in making that happen if you didn't find something through the marketplace or didn't know about it. Right now, Equinox, Eclipse platform itself, and Wrap are the only projects that are active in the LTS Git repository, but any project that can be built with CBI can be brought into LTS, and we're looking forward to adding more and more projects. Anybody that wants their projects available in here, just contact anyone in LTS, and we can make that happen. And it's just a list of the steering committee members. We've got the companies listed there, but we're happy to add you if you're interested in getting more involved. We also have premium members that are members of Eclipse that have full access, members of Eclipse LTS that have full access to the infrastructure, but not necessarily participating at the steering committee level. Some links and resources. I'm going to be putting the slides up, of course, on the website for EclipseCon, so that'll be available to you, how to contact us. And I'd appreciate if you can spend a moment to go to eclipsecon.org and rate the talk. And that's all I had for today. Thank you very much for coming.
Now we have just 5 minutes for questions or for extra questions after the session. Are there any questions?
Is party fixes publicly available, or is it up to the LTS members?
The code fixes, like the actual source code, has to be available as part of the Eclipse license, but the binaries are not. The binaries are only available to members of the Eclipse working group. So the idea is you're putting extra effort into making these things available on older releases, and you should be able to benefit from that extra work. So it isn't just made available to anybody. They have to be an Eclipse member to get at the binaries. And of course, your customers get them because they paid for them.
Is there any coordination to provide service releases or something if there are more fixes available for a specific version?
I'm sorry?
Service release 1 or service release 2, are these fixes sometimes collected together to service release?
You could do that. We haven't. There's been some discussion at the steering committee whether it makes sense to, at some point, roll them up and say, let's put out a 453 type of thing. It's possible. Anybody that goes to the most recent build will effectively get that. The build has all of the fixes in it. By the same token, you can also say, I've got a customer who wants just this one bug fixed. I don't want to be picking up a whole bunch of other changes that I don't know, I haven't had time to test, so I'm not comfortable about picking them up. You can make a private forge that's based off of the original 452 release, make that one fix, and isolate your customers from change if that's important to you. But if you go to the LTS Central, for the version you're interested in, 4.4, 4.3, it goes back as far as 4.2.2 right now, then you can pick up, like the whole build is there for the platform, for example, so you can pick up the Windows 32-bit JDK or SDK, Eclipse SDK, and you have effectively a new release that's got all those fixes in it. But we haven't got any plans to officially label something as a new release number.
What's the oldest version?
Right now it's 4.2.2.
So from 3.
Unless you're 3.8, 4.2.2 and 3.8 are about the same. So we don't have a build. The main reason is because before 4.2.2 we didn't have CBI. And the build on Maven Tycho, the build mechanism before that, 3.6 and 3.7 and earlier, was quite different and very complicated. So we haven't put the investment in getting it to work on LTS, primarily because nobody's been directly asking for it and wanting to do the work to make it happen. So it's theoretically possible to make it there. It's just the infrastructure is there to run builds and the disk space and all of that. It's just there would be some engineering work needed to make to get the build actually up on its feet.
Where was the big compatibility break that you took forward that from?
With E4? Yeah, it was between. The official switchover was between version 3 and version 4, but the first 4.2.2 was the first release where the platform officially adopted E4. Yeah, and that's equivalent to 3.8. They The only difference really is the workbench itself inside of the platform. Any other questions? Okay, thanks very much again.